Hello, I'm Hal Lublin.
And I'm Mark Gagliardi.
Since the dawn of humanity, one issue has gone unsettled. With the fate of the world in the balance, we're here to settle, once and for all. Best children's book.
That's right. Don't worry, everyone. We got this.
Podcast should have a theme song. Podcast should not have a theme song. Yes, they should. No, they shouldn't. They sound good. Yeah, but people are just going to skip past it. You know what? You're right. We got this.
Best children's book.
Best children's book.
How many times do you have to say it before it appears?
Oh, one more, but I have a mirror right here. I'm ready to go.
All right.
For those of you who don't recognize that voice, there's no way that we can talk about children's literature without talking about the man who is about to drop a book for young audiences.
Has just dropped. This will come out. This will come out on the 31st. The book will be out.
So this will be out
to purchase. Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, back on the show, people of the world, it's Ben Acker. How are you, buddy?
Woo! Great.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
Before we jump into this topic,
go back and listen to the Quentin Tarantino episode.
Yes.
Just so you know who Ben is.
If you're not familiar with his work. This book, Stories to Keep You Alive Despite Vampires, which I hold in my hands. This is an audio podcast, so it means nothing to you, but I have it and I love it. Is the best children's book on the planet that you should buy.
It wins.
What we're going to do is I want to talk about it a little bit, and then we're going to put it in an emerald case that floats above all other children's books, and we'll pick from the rest. The other garbage heap that's
So can you do the opening thing again? Second best children's book.
Talk a little bit about, I mean, I could talk about it because I love it so much, but I want you to talk about it because you wrote it.
Just generally talk about it?
Yeah, tell us what, explain to the people who are maybe not aware from the title, which is kind of self-explanatory, Stories to Keep You Alive Despite Vampires. Tell everybody about it, about the book.
Well, Hal and Mark and everybody, Stories to Keep You Alive Despite Vampires is a collection of short stories that are some parts spooky, some parts funny, some parts both, some parts neither. But it's a collection of campfire stories and ghost stories that came about through a combination of luck and preparedness. And it was super exciting to write prose. It was super exciting to write short form prose. And I'm real proud of it. I'm real happy with it. Every time I would get a draft to edit and send back in, I was like, they shouldn't let me write this thing. They shouldn't let this go out for people. It's so just absolutely me on a page. Yes. Which is, considering, our background together writing and working on the Thrilling Adventure Hour, thinking that was some undiluted voice stuff there, even though it was, with my writing partner. This is even more me-y.
Yeah.
Which is, good if you like that sort of thing.
I do. I will also like to chime in and say that I too loved this book. I texted you right after I read it that it did feel like a pure distillation of Ben Acker because we spent so long with you and Ben Blacker having created the Thrilling Adventure Hour and we did, a decade's worth of shows. What do you think because here was a difference that I was very excited about is that now audiences are going to get to read things besides dialogue that you have written, because our scripts would frequently be filled with Ben Ackerisms that were buried in stage directions and notes within the script. And all that the audience heard was mostly the dialogue. How different is it now that you're crafting stories that have this element as well, that have this third person voice as well?
It's challenging. It's because, the stage directions in that show were few and far between. Mm-hmm. It was mostly sound effects and dialogue. And to be able to write the prosy bits in between, the fill-ins and the setting the scene and what is and isn't dialogue, it's the good kind of challenging.
Yeah.
I guess it's, and it's also Blacker and I wrote 3, Star Wars novels, and writing this in short story form, vastly different from that even. Mm-hmm. It's a lot more like sketch writing.
Just because you have to get in fast if you're going to do, if it's a bunch of short stories versus, 250 pages to tell one tale.
Yeah. It's very, economical in the way that sketches. And they say, comedy and horror are similar in that, their tension and release. And it's the same kind of thing. It's heightening to the highest point and then get out. There were stories in the book that I thought were going to be 40 more pages, Yeah. And then it was oh, no. Let's get out here and imply with a sentence what those 40 pages would have had.
And that is some of the magic of that book too.
Yeah.
It's fun telescoping in and out of stories like that.
Yeah.
I just love, like, I'm sitting here doing the math because I don't like when other people talk because it means I'm not talking. And we've known each other for.
You just do math when other people are talking?
Sometimes, whatever. Sometimes it's a song. We've known each other for like 18 years. And in reading this book, I 100% hear your voice in every single word. But also, having performed your writing for 18 years, it feels like, and maybe you felt this way too, Mark, like it's a monologue that was like a series of monologues and stories that was written for me to go perform and read, like, just because I know not the shorthand, but like the topography of your writing. Like I know where everything goes. I can hear it. All the cadences, the rhythms, like where the little jokes are, what's an aside and what's said straightforward. It adds an extra layer of enjoyment. But for someone who has never even heard of the Thrilling Adventure Hour, this is the book that I would have loved to have read when I was like 9, 10, 11 years old. Like I would not have put this down. It would have been completely worn out and creased because I would have read it multiple times. So it's great now I have that book and my friend wrote it.
Yeah.
And I get to tell everybody about it. And it's just so exciting. Like it's so good. It's so
it's
good.
Fantastic, dude.
Thanks,
it's also, what's cool about it is that it's cool. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's a cool book for kids. It's not you talk to kids on the level in this book.
Mm-hmm.
It was surprising how much there wasn't like, hey, will you turn this dial and make it more for kids or whatever? Like there's I didn't get
you write
much
the
of that.
way you write, and your writing has always been accessible by any age.
Come on, guys. Here's the thing, and you can get it. And if you don't know this word, look it up and let's keep going.
Yeah, exactly.
100%.
You're a kid. You may not have come across this word yet. Fine. I'll wait. Go look
Here
at
it is.
now.
This is what books are for.
Yeah.
You know, like when I was a kid getting read to at bedtime, if there was a word that I didn't know yet, that my father was reading, as I'm going to bed, I would raise my hand and he would either define it if he had a good definition or else we'd go to the dictionary. That's right. Yeah. He'd invented the internet and he looked it up and that's how your vocabulary grows. And I'm not super aware of much of that in here, but I wasn't going to shy away from. I feel like the guiding, what makes it appropriate for youngs is what you're saying, Hal, is this is the book I would have wanted. The amount of spooky I could handle, the amount of just freaky scary I could handle was up to a point. And then past that point was I don't want to hear this. I don't want to know this. Yeah. But at that point, I want this to stay with me forever and kind of freak me out in the dark.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there are going to be children who read this that will have it help inform and shape their sense of humor, like the humor filter that they use to look at the world. And so that's another cool thing about the book. And another thing that's so cool about it is it's really funny and you'll get a lot of it as a child. And then as you reread it and revisit it because, it's my favorite book. I've gone back to books that I read as a kid and read them again because I love them so much and they still hold up and you maybe appreciate another layer and realize, this informed my viewpoint on something or my sense of humor about something. So this feels like a book that can do that.
Thanks, dude. As I was going, I was I want this to be a book half remembered. I want this to be a book where kids grow up to go, I feel like I remember reading this thing, but that couldn't have been a thing because that's not a thing. That's too weird.
Yeah.
But I swear to God, I read this thing where this happened. And does anybody else remember this? The internet?
I had that for Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Oh, the dog version?
Knuckle on your snout has stuck in my head for some reason. That one line.
Oh, that's the other thing about this book that is pretty cool, that is tooting someone else's horn. The artist, Scott, is so good at it. I wanted for this book, like Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, to be moderately effective at scarring children in the writing, but the art, the illustrations to really stick in there forever and mess kids up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's
really
cool
great.
is they have that sort of vintage style to them.
Without being a reproduction of the other thing. It's not a parody. It's not a spoof.
No. I'm not talking about even Scary Stories. I'm talking about they harken back to that sort of high contrast style going back to, the illustrated classics books. You know what I mean?
There's a story in the book about a spooky phone.
That's exactly the image I was going to mention because it looks like a drawing from the 50s.
Yeah.
But all of the contrast of light is someone holding a phone while in the dark in their bedroom. And it is a freaky image.
It's really cool.
Yeah, it's really good. The book is great,
so
man.
good.
We're both huge. You know, we're obviously friends and
look, this is the best podcast I've ever been on. Keep talking.
Yeah. This book is fantastic and I hope everybody reads it. And your audience is smart and your audience that is already smart is just going to get younger, but will be still equally smart.
I keep saying this is for the weird kid.
Yeah.
And the Halloween adult.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know,
I like that.
There's the people there. It's a specific group of people, and I love them. And like they're the Gaiman heads. You know, they're the Tim Burton fans.
Sure.
You know, like, but they're head and shoulders above it. They're the Halloween adults. They're the ones that look forward to it all year round.
Oh yeah.
And like that's their Halloween is their Christmas. This is my Valentine to Halloween adults.
Your Valentine to people for whom Halloween is Christmas.
That's right.
Well, what an Easter miracle.
God bless us, everyone. Next year in Jerusalem.
Should we talk about some other great children's books? Because you're not the first. You're not the first children's book author.
I am alphabetically.
That's true.
That's fair. Not by first name though. That would be A.A. Milne.
Yes.
You got me again, Milne.
Dang it, Milne.
I'll Cuddleston your pie.
Right. There hasn't been an author yet who changed their last name to Aardvark just so they would be the first listing in the library.
Aardvark P. Aronson.
Did you guys have Aardvark businesses in your respective hometowns? There was in Knoxville, there were a couple of businesses that like, so you would open the phone book and you'd be like, well, I need a plumber. And it's like Aardvark Plumbing.
Yeah. Or like AAA carpentry. It's
the only reason it's 3 A's is because they want to be first.
The extra A is for savings.
That's right.
If you need help with your taxes, come to Accounting over on Main Street.
Accounting.
Yeah. Houses for Halloween adults.
I also, all of my businesses are for Halloween adults and weird kids. There are like a billion different children's books. Yeah. I went and compiled a list of ones that I felt like were notable and impactful and just sort of well written. Some of them are more recent. Some of them have kind of persevered. How do you, Mark, you're always the organizational person. How do you want to attack this?
Well, I was thinking about this earlier. I think there are, and Ben, you now knowing a little more about the publishing world, I don't know if there are specific categories that is broken into, but it seems to me like there are 3 main categories that we can look at here. I'm not saying we necessarily have to pull one from each and then, have them duke it out at the end, but I think we can break it down into these categories. And that would be sort of early development board books and the first books that you get. And then
like baby books.
Sure. Like the Hungry Caterpillar and
the monster at the end of this book.
The monster
he's starving. He ate the monster
at the end of this book.
The monster at the end of this book is for way more advanced audiences.
That's true.
The Hungry Caterpillar.
It is.
No offense, Eric Carle.
Yeah. Wow.
Right. Oliver Shalom.
Carl.
Yeah. Rest in peace.
Yeah. We miss you and your whole bunch.
Good night to you, Moon. You, Eric Carle.
And then I would say that there are the picture books, early young kid picture books. And then as all kids, or I'm assuming we did, get excited when they finally graduated to chapter books. And there are chapter books for kids as well that I think there's some great ones of those that are on this.
I'll tell you, this book is my book, and the Star Wars books we wrote have a classification that when I first heard it, I was deeply offended.
Oh,
because they are.
Is it terrible books?
No, effectively, it's damned with faint praise version of that. They were like the following middle grade book is coming out, and I was like, middle grade, like we worked really hard on that, like. We think it's top notch. How are you and how are you advertising? Like, you're the people advertising for this book. Why are you calling it middle grade? Like, it should be top grade.
It's school based. The USDA isn't classifying these books.
Yeah, but it turns out that
prime book,
the middle grade as distinct from young adult.
Yeah, 6th, 7th, 8th, right?
Sure.
Would be middle grade. I assume it correlates to middle school.
Ish, yeah. I think that's true. Which all that is, I don't know how much you want to get into this, but it seems also that that's for the gatekeepers, more than for the audience. Like this is fifth grade is fifth, sixth, seventh is more than sixth, seventh, eighth. But by fifth grade, like, weren't you sneaking Stephen King books?
Sure.
Yeah. Right? If younger than that, you read to your level. Like, if you love reading, at a certain point, like, the best example I can come up with is when I was a kid, I loved Greek mythology. I went through like a phase when I was like 11. I read every single book on Greek mythology in our school library. Then every single book on Greek mythology in the kids section of the library. Then I went to the adult section.
Then you went to regionals.
Out of books.
Yeah.
I went to regionals all the way to state.
Made it to national finals in mythology.
And I killed a Pegasus, and now I can't compete anymore. It wasn't my fault.
Well, you also turned that judge to stone.
That was my fault.
Hubris, Hal.
It was.
Yeah. It was hubris.
Mm-hmm.
I do understand, though, classifying them like that. You mentioned it's for the gatekeepers, but I, as an uncle, go to the store for birthdays and
you're a gatekeeper.
And yes. No, I'll go and I'll go, okay, I need to know age appropriate wise for nieces and nephews. Like, okay, they're turning 9. Well, I don't know which books are good for a 9-year-old or which, toys even, but books more so because that is, even more developmentally based, I think. So I understand there being those things.
Oh, sure. It makes sense.
And it did feel kind of fun to go.
The best thing I've heard about it, there's a writer named Shannon Hale who I met at one of these book conferences who has written all sorts of things. She's written just like, if she's already written this kind of book, she wants to write the next kind of book. She just wants to do all the things. But she said that middle grade books are her favorite, because there's a chance that someone who grows up to love reading, your book was the first book that they loved.
Yeah.
Because that's the age where you like land in it. And I always thought that was
you pick a favorite,
profound and wonderful. Like, that's when you start to notice like books having an impact on you.
Did you think about that a lot when you were writing it?
I thought about it somewhat when I was writing it. Like, there's with great power comes great whatever. Right. But like, but yeah, I don't know. There were part of the terms and conditions of like getting into this book was to try and like make sure that there's no jokes that only adults will get.
Right.
And I'm probably 80%.
Well, Halloween adults and the weird kid. They'll get it. Yeah.
They'll get it.
Yeah.
Well.
So then how do you want to attack? I was sitting there, doing more math. Now when you mentioned chapter books, I was like, I don't think I have a lot of chapter books on here. And then I realized I have an immense number of chapter books.
Oh, sure.
Here.
There's a lot
I don't think of it. But I loved reading so much. Again, like my mother turned me on to Beverly Cleary when I was like 6 or 7. And then I read everything that she wrote. Yeah. Like,
oh yeah.
I mean, Henry and Ribsy were like, that was the childhood I wanted.
My dog is my dog because he looks like Ribsy.
He does look
that's great,
remarkably like Ribsy.
And there were the covers of those Henry and Ribsy books that were this knockoff Norman Rockwell.
Yes.
Like a Czechoslovakian Norman Rockwell.
Yes.
I think that's right. I think I looked it up and found like, oh, that's not Norman Rockwell.
No. It's Normanchis Rockwellski.
Yeah. It says Norman Rockwell, but there's just like slashes and umlauts and things over all the letters.
Do you think whoever's the Norman Rockwell in another country, it's like the Flintstones, like they have the same name, but just in whatever
Norman
language it is?
Yeah.
Norman Rockwell.
Oh God.
They were so good. The book, the one of the books I have on my list is Henry in the Clubhouse, which I think was the third of the Henry and Ribsy books and is the best of them. Like the copy I have of it is almost turned into dust because I read it so much. Like that was just impactful. Like the whole thing is sort of like the most whitewashed version of the 50s and 60s you can imagine, where it's like, oh shucks. And you discover this dog and the dog becomes your best friend. And that was, I wanted a dog to be my best friend. Like I wanted a dog to be my dog. And all through childhood, every dog was my mother's dog. I was like, don't you want to come sleep in here? And the dog was like, buzz off.
Because your dog was also from the 50s.
Yeah. Like that kid, hey, buzz off, kid. Stop reading that garbage.
Did your dog tell you to scram?
Yeah. Am scray, lovely.
Make like a birthday candle and blow.
Yeah, the dog stole my carton of milk at lunch. Damn dog. But yeah, that was just a big one for me. I don't think it's the best one, but like really important landmark book.
I think that what you said, one thing you said, Ben, that I love that notion that there is a first book that is the one that makes you love reading. And weirdly for me, mine goes back before, middle grade books to, mine personally is The Monster at the End of This Book, because that introduced me to the idea that a book can be active and like that art and comedy can be participatory in that way. So that was just my personal favorite. I guess it didn't
It's not just your personal favorite.
It instilled in me a love of comedy, and
it's classic. It's on my list for sure.
Classic. Yeah. So why don't we start?
Why don't we all agree that Monster at the End of This Book is golden? Put it up on the wall.
I mean, Monster at the End of This Book. I am ready to put that one on the Mount Rushmore, and then chisel 3 of the faces off of it, until we have one ultimate winner. But
you're doing There Can Be Only One. You're not doing Rushmores now.
No. We've always been at There Can Be Only One.
Yeah, that was season 2 is Rushmore's.
Yeah, season 2 we're going to do all Rushmores. But we're going to.
You're still in season 1?
Yeah. This is season 1.
How long is your season? 1 million episodes?
Look, we're actors. We're not good at contracts.
Yeah. We've got 8 more episodes in season 1.
Yeah.
Your thing is season 1 needs to be 10 times syndication numbers.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then once we hit that golden number, we go to season 2.
Yeah. If you hit 400 episodes.
And then, 400 more, then a hiatus. Then we take a 2-week break.
Exactly.
And we come back. There aren't that many things, you guys.
Once we hit 1,200 episodes, then we do the movie. That I'm excited about.
Sure, 1,200 in a movie. Yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah, you've heard that phrase.
Yeah.
Do you want to I'll throw out a couple of different versions of this. Sure. We can either just start rattling them off and throwing out ones that we want to add to the pot as contenders, or we can start chronologically and we can look at board books first and what makes a great board book and what they're trying to do and find the best examples of those, then move into storybooks and then move into chapter books. What do you guys think?
I'm going to be terrible at the second one. I can tell you that.
Which is the second one?
That's the board books, then these books and that. I'd rather just go, are you going to write these down, Mark? Because
I'll put them in the chat.
Or just put them on just write them like in a little doc for yourself.
Oh, I'll write them on
the internet.
I'll write them on a piece of paper.
Fine.
Yeah, start your own book.
Listen to my internet.
Look, when we were children, we wrote things on paper.
That's right.
And our dogs bullied us.
All right. So are we going round robin style then? This is fun. I don't think we do this very often.
Yeah. Let's go round robin style.
You know what? We already started talking about it. I'm going to go first.
Oh, go ahead.
And I'm going to say the monster at the end of this book. Yeah. Well, we already talked about it. And I wanted to be the one to put it on the list.
Sure.
I also did.
Oh, then Ben, do you want to put the monster at the end of this book?
No, you got it. I had a whole I was like, I have 3 books I will champion. Yeah. And then as runners up to mine, but we opened with, so now it's all just out the window. Whatever you guys want to do.
Yeah. I mean, it's Grover. We all love Grover. It's really, really clever. It's really smart. Like almost everything that involves Muppets in some ways, and Sesame Street. Like there are layers to what they do that like maybe a lot of people don't catch when they're very, very young. Yeah. But this book is probably a really good distilled version of how clever they are. And it's really well illustrated.
Speaking of distilled versions.
Grover's all of us. We're all Grover, right? Grover is like the representation of who we are.
Speaking of distilled versions, for those who don't know this book, can one of you give a 1-sentence description of what the monster at the end of this book is?
Grover, a little Jewish Muppet, is trying to prevent the reader from turning the page because, as he says on page 1, there is a monster at the end of this book. And the closer you get, the more pages you turn, the closer you get to the monster at the end of the book. And he puts all sorts of obstacles in your way to turning the page.
And every time you turn a page, the obstacle.
It should be pointed out that Grover is a monster.
Yes. All right. Yeah, I mean, it's a perfect children's book. There's even there's a new ebook version out that is pretty fun, but is not to me the tactile magic of the original. But it is fun because there are now animations when you swipe to turn the page of the bricks crumbling or the wood that he has hammered up falling apart. But there's nothing like that original version. Have you seen? I saw a ringer tee that I love. It was a ringer tee of the "You turned the page." I was very, very excited to see it.
You know what's particularly appropriate for the three of us to love this book is
Yeah.
that it is 1000% character voice. Like, it's all point of view. It's all Grover talking to the audience. It's all, there's no, right? As I remember, there's no narrator. There's it's just Grover Grover in it up. Couldn't be more.
Imploring you to stop.
And
Yes,
it's
there's nobody else for him to talk to.
Yeah, it's a direct ask. There's no third person narrator. This book is Grover talking to me, asking me to do something. And by continuing this book, I'm doing the opposite of what Grover wants me to do.
This is
and
scene
he is
work.
losing his mind.
Right? Like, this is exactly like character as comedy.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the obstacle is you, the reader.
Yeah. It's
to the hero's journey. Like, there's so much.
It's got a great lesson in it too, which is overcoming fear. Don't listen to monsters. Number one.
Don't listen to monsters.
Don't listen to Jewish people. That's what they're trying to say. There was coding messages against us for so long.
There was this great TikTok that was this guy going, "Here's my theory: all blue Muppets are Jewish," and then he supported it and showed
I think TikTok.
Grover is the star of Shalom Sesame or whatever.
Yes.
And like Harry Monster. I mean, some of it is just obvious, but like,
yes. But yeah, like it's a lesson. You know, you're helping Grover overcome his fear, and then you're learning that the way you build things up, it's never as bad as you build it up to be. So instead of like, it's better to just do something and overcome your fear. And that's a great lesson for a kid to learn.
Yeah.
Ben, what do you want to throw out there?
Thidwick the Moose.
Oh,
it was a Dr. Seuss book that resonated more than the rest. It was about this moose who's going to the. Have you guys read it? Are you familiar?
No, I'm not familiar with it.
No, I'm not. But
this moose. His name is Thidwick.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a family name or something. And he's going from one end of the forest to the other. And as he goes, he keeps encountering animals who are like, "Hey, can I hitch a ride in your antlers? Because you got plenty of antler, man." And like, "I'm going that way, but I'm too lazy to walk." And he's like, "Yeah, I guess, hop up." And it's an exaggeration of animals until finally he's like absolutely encumbered, but persevering in that Seussian, Horton kind of self-martyring kind of way. And then the reveal, they're like, what are you doing? Like, what's on your agenda? Why are you crossing the forest? And he's like, "Yeah, no, I'm molting my antlers." So he gets where he's going and just drops their ungrateful asses in the middle of the forest and takes off. And that's it. Like, you guys figure out your own way back.
What drew you to this book?
I don't know. It felt like, I mean, it was all the good of Dr. Seuss, but it felt like, more of a filling story than a Hop on Pop don't get me wrong. I love a Fox and Socks.
Sure.
But like,
those are more just to teach you words.
Those exist
sounds.
for rhymes, right? Yeah. This one was like, here's a Tales from the Crypt ending for these, for these animals, these greedy animals. It was like, as I think about it now, like a response to the Giving Tree.
Yeah.
yes.
That's really, but I would love to, read those back to back.
Yeah.
Give and give and give and give. And then hey, wait a minute.
Yeah. Good luck. Yeah. Good luck, everybody, taking advantage. Which I don't even know now that I say it out loud. Like, do moose molt their antlers? Like, that seems improbable to me.
I think they do.
All right. Well, then it was a good early science.
I think so. Does the whole thing fall off and then they grow new ones?
I don't know.
Or is it the layer of snake skin on the outside? They just
I know
slither out of that.
Like, when they're young, they have that velvet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when they get at a certain point, the antlers just go, and then they regrow in a new configuration. You get new antlers.
Is that true, or are you making it up?
Does it matter?
I mean, I guess
for purposes of books.
That's
a middle grade question, Ben.
This is not a news podcast. This is a parody podcast.
Please.
Podcast.
As far as anybody knows, I'm right. Our listeners are way smarter than me. I'm sure they've already corrected me well before the episode many times come out. They just know.
Kate McManus is a librarian. She's got to be screaming right now, or will be for the rest of the.
That's not what Thidwick's about.
Yeah,
there's no moose in Thidwick.
I'm going to throw one out before we take a break.
Mm-hmm.
This is a classic book, and it captures a very specific feeling for me, which is that feeling of growing up in an urban area and it's snowing and having that experience the first time. And that's Ezra Jack Keats' The Snowy Day, which is notable not only because it's a really cool book, but it also was like an early depiction of a black child in the city. And there are maybe some things in it that don't hold up in 2022, but the fact that normalized, it's not all just white children in books for kids.
White suburban children.
Deal. But
here's me living in the city.
Even more than that, that feeling of like your first snowfall, especially in, I think the book takes place in New York, is like, it's how it changes the landscape around you. Like all of a sudden you're in a brand new world and it's all the same stuff just covered in snow. I think is a really cool book and it captures that feeling. And that feels like a core memory for most kids. Like the first time, if you're somewhere where it snows, you remember the first time you were aware of it snowing, you were out in the snow and how cool that was. Yeah.
Snowy Day is great. There's you can now also watch the movie they made 2016. There's a movie. There's it's one of those ones that's ubiquitous and all over, and you know the imagery of it. Also, it's just the art in that book is beautiful.
It is.
You know what I mean? It's got that style of almost like Mary Blair art where there are no it's not line drawings and filled in. It's just giant blocks of color. And I think that's going to be a big part of these books too, is the artwork within them. As you were talking about before, Ben, having what a big part of your book the artwork is and what it's trying to evoke and create. And there's the simplicity of your first snowfall and these inside a city, which is a pretty complicated backdrop. Mm-hmm. It's still, block shapes and, really accessible, accessible and simple and just beautiful. Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we will round robin some more of these books. We'll see if we can narrow it down to some finalists, see if anybody can kick Grover off of Mount Rushmore. And in the meantime, let's hear about some of the other excellent podcasts on the Maximum Fun Network, as well as some of the sponsors that help us bring We Got This with Mark and Hal to you every week. We'll be right back.
Kicking Grover off Mount Rushmore makes me wish there was a Muppet North by Northwest.
This episode of We Got This with Mark and Hal is brought to you in part by Trade Coffee. And I don't want to get too deep or sentimental here, but self-care is important. We all have these little moments in the day that we make just for ourselves. And you should do that. You should maximize that time. And that means you shouldn't start with some mediocre grocery store coffee. You deserve to start your day with the best coffee that you can make at home. And that's what Trade Coffee provides. Mark, you've been trying different types of coffee that you've gotten from Trade. What do you have now? I'm excited to find out.
Well, currently the coffee that I have from Trade is Panther.
Ooh.
Yeah, Panther Mejor, which I believe means the best panther. It is from Colombia. And here's the thing that I in particular about this coffee that I love. I've loved all the coffees that they've sent to me. I actually went through and I switched my desired coffee profile from, I believe it was, robust and fruity to something a little smoother. So I was like, let's see what they send me when I want something a little smoother. And I got Panther and I love it. You know what I love, Hal? Cherries and chocolate. You know what flavors I love getting hints of in my coffee? Cherries and chocolate. And it's, it's great. I love it. I can't say enough great things about Trade Coffee. I'm having a good time.
Do you find that over time, because you've been doing this for a while now, that it's sort of changing your relationship with coffee and what you're looking for? Like your palate is getting a little bit more refined?
It is, because I'm so used to drinking, like you mentioned before, just, whatever coffee was around. Come on, man. We came up in the theater. We've had some burnt garbage coffee backstage. So when we get a really nice cup of coffee, and where I can actually think about things like, oh, do I want to go light and fruity or do I want to go mellow and silky this week? Those aren't things I ever thought about before. It was always just, is this hot and can I get back on stage quickly? So it's nice to get a little self-care in there and actually have a really nice cup of coffee.
The best part is that you can shop their most popular coffees by roast or flavor profile, or you can take their coffee quiz and get expertly matched with coffees that you'll love. Like, you can either know what you want going in, and that's great, or you can work with them to figure out what you want and what you like the best.
Yeah, I was a quiz guy. I loved the quiz. But I'm an online quiz fan anyway. You don't even drink coffee, but you should take every online quiz that you can. Come on. Look, people of the world, don't you just want to do this for the online quiz element of it? Which coffee are you?
I want to know what coffee I am. And the best part is, when you try Trade Coffee, you've got nothing to lose because Trade guarantees you will love your first bag. And if not, they'll work with you to replace it for free. The goal is for you to find the coffee that's perfect for you that you're going to love.
Yeah. You know what, Hal, while you were doing that last little bit, I actually went online and I looked up and I found out what coffee you are. It turns out you are El Mejor Panther.
I knew it. I knew the pet. Show them that you're a panther. Listen, if you want to support small businesses and brew the best cup of coffee you've ever made at home, it's time to try Trade Coffee right now. Trade is offering our listeners a total of $30 off your first order, plus free shipping at drinktrade.com/wegotthis. That's drinktrade.com/wegotthis for $30 off of your subscription to the best coffees in the country. So enjoy, and I hope you're drinking a Trade coffee as you listen to the rest of this episode of We Got This with Mark and Hal.
All my Disney parents are Ursula and the Tramp. Sorry.
This week, Greatest Discovery becomes Greatest Trek.
That's because Greatest Trek is for way more than just Discovery.
We renamed our hit show that's on Maximum Fun, covering all the new Star Trek shows. Lower Decks, Strange New Worlds, Picard, Prodigy, Discovery, and any other new Star Trek show Paramount throws at us.
Come find out why we're the most important Star Trek podcast on the internet with our funny, informative recaps of all the new Star Trek shows that Paramount keeps churning out.
Subscribe to Greatest Trek. It's a new Star Trek podcast from the makers of The Greatest Generation.
Hey there, it's Annabelle Gurwitch.
And I'm Lara House. We host Tiny Victories, the 15-minute podcast that's about the little things.
Getting into the tiny victory frame of mind is about recognizing minor accomplishments and fleeting joys.
Isn't it a wonderful day when the first password you try actually works?
When it's freezing cold outside and toasty as all get out in my shower, my tiny victory is that I turn off the water and get on with my day.
We can't change this big dumb world, but we can celebrate the tiny wins.
So join us on Maximum Fun or wherever you listen to podcasts. Let's get tiny!
And we are back. Let's talk about some more children's books. Guys, we got a lot of children's books to get through. There's some really, really great classics out there. So let's keep this going. Am I next?
You're next.
All right.
Wait, before you go.
Yeah.
How many more rounds, Robin, are we going to do?
I don't know. We're going to have, I've got a list of,
you want to just rattle off a small, do you want to do boom, boom, boom? Or do you want, it's your show. I'm just saying, I don't know how many. How many do you have on your list? And do you want to just start rattling off your list and we'll start talking about the ones that we really want to pull and mention?
I think I have 25 or 30 on my list.
Oh boy.
Ben has 3. That's
Ben has 3.
I know. I burned through because one of them was Grover and the other one was Thidwick. I can tell you that Winnie the Pooh's. No, I'm going to save the third one because it's my big closer. But your Winnie the Pooh's great. Your Peter Pan is great.
These are. I'm going to rattle off some classics, some old 20th century and more modern classics, and tell me if there are any of these that jump out to you. We've got for the younger crowd, The Very Hungry Caterpillar, The Giving Tree, Corduroy, Good Night Moon, getting a little older, I guess Corduroy's for a little older, Where the Wild Things Are, Madeline, The Velveteen Rabbit.
Yeah.
Sulwe, the Lupita Nyong'o book, Light in the Attic, and Where the Sidewalk Ends from Shel Silverstein.
Right. Great.
Any of the Ramona books. And,
age 8 only.
What's that?
Age 8 only.
Age 8 only. Ramona Quimby,
age 8 only.
Pretty perfect. The Phantom Toll Booth.
Yep. I have that on my list.
Yeah, A Wrinkle in Time, Holes.
Yep. A Wrinkle in Time, Holes.
A Wrinkle in Time. Time hole.
Activating time hole.
And
I haven't done that in a long time. It's been a couple of years.
Wow. William Daniel, Hal, you've still got it.
Hello, is Trick Clock there? Is Trick Clock? Can I speak to Trick Clock?
Trick Clock, if heaven exists and God is real, what would you like to hear him say when you walk through the pearly gates?
Activating Bliss Hole.
And Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. was the last one that I wanted to mention off of that. What about something like something that kids frequently read, but is not necessarily a children's book? I'm thinking of things like yes, Edith Hamilton's Mythology,
Les Estrada, yeah.
50 Shades of Grey,
Titus Andronicus. Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, or The Hobbit.
I think that's a children's. I think that I have both of those. I think those are both children's books.
And I'm going to throw out this. What about Peter Pan? Because Peter Pan was a play initially, not a book.
True.
I mean, Peter Pan is kind of perfect, but I don't know if it fits in children's books. Now, the Wizard of Oz series. How do we do this without mentioning the Wizard of Oz series as well? You know?
We almost did. So wait, Alice in Wonderland. Who said that yet?
Yeah. I haven't said Alice in Wonderland yet. And these are.
Have we said the Velveteen Rabbit?
I did. Yeah, we said and I did a little cheer for that one. That one was great. The Velveteen Rabbit was great. It felt important. It felt like you learned something. It was a resonating book.
Yeah,
like having to make a sacrifice as a child.
Yeah,
you know.
I mean, like for scarlet fever and burning. Like, there's dark stuff in the Velveteen Rabbit. It's intense.
Yes, it is.
What do you think is? Do you guys know if this might be too big a question? Is there a most important lesson that a book can teach a kid?
I think the lesson is taught you hope that your child learns each lesson at the time that they're supposed to learn it. So there is no most important. I mean, there are fundamental, like treat other people with respect, be kind, be polite, find the times to be impolite and be polite then. Mm-hmm. Like, there are so many different lessons. I think
don't trust monsters.
Don't trust monsters.
I'll tell you, I was writing mine, not to, get back to the thing, but that was one of the things that made me happy to be writing a book directed at kids. Is there's a lesson in it, and I don't think I'm explicit about it in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I don't know. I've talked about it on a couple of podcasts. I don't know how if it's cooler to let it be discovered and people find it, or if it's that's a podcast that you just talk about the thing. So I'm a little loath to go a cool thing that I found along the way in mine.
Yeah.
It was kind of unintentional until I saw it and was like, oh no, now it's on purpose. And so I can do a draft that's there are a handful of stories that are, campfire tales, like a counselor at a campfire telling a story to children that then pull out to reveal another counselor having told that story.
I love that element.
And there's and the whole frame of the thing is a guy telling stories to avoid being eaten by vampires, right? Mm-hmm. But there's an ulterior motive to that too. And I'm writing this thing going, if I can teach kids even subliminally to question who's telling them what and why, that's noble. That's something important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You did a thing that I love too in the book where you would tell a ghost story and the lesson of the ghost story would then be something purely practical for the camp's sake. Those were some of my favorite moments in it when it was the moral of
equipment.
Yeah. Make sure you put the canoe equipment back in the shed. That's the moral of the story.
Yeah.
I love that. It's a fun detail that keeps happening in the book too. That's a lot of fun.
But that's it. That's who's that's the waterfront counselors telling a ghost story. And so this is the purpose of, start to read with that eye, start to, in a world where it feels like that's a lesson.
When you talk about lessons, one that I think is really important for kids that maybe even if they're told, it doesn't always take, I can say that from personal experience, which is to feel like you're enough and to not be, not that you shouldn't grow and improve, but realize you're enough at any given time. And that's, you already mentioned the book briefly, and I recently bought it as a gift for a child because I as soon as I looked at it, I was like, oh, I remember this. I have the experience of reading it, and I remember the story, which is Corduroy, about a bear who's passed up because he's missing a button. He spends all night looking for it because if he doesn't have the button, then no one will take him home because he's imperfect. And then the child returns the next day to buy him anyway, even though the mother was horrendously unkind.
Yeah.
But it is
disgusting.
This gross bear that's missing a button. Ugh.
What else is wrong with him?
Why don't you just buy a pile of vomit?
why don't you just buy this used Velveteen Rabbit?
It's got fresh scarlet fever on the whiskers for you.
New Velveteen Rabbit, barely used, but like used just enough.
But yeah, for sale, Velveteen Rabbit used
That's
once.
right.
Yeah,
that's right. There it is.
But
cut
yeah,
cut out my riff.
Yeah.
Let's go right to that.
I love
straight to the Hemingway.
I love Corduroy as a story, and I love the animation of it, and it has like I have a very visceral memory tied to it, which to me is like the sign of, oh, that was a good book, that even if I hadn't thought about it in a while, when I saw it, it flashed back.
Is it the same lesson as Pippin?
Scotty
Think about
Pippen?
your life.
Like,
You've got magic to do.
Isn't the lesson of Pippin, don't try and be special, it's not worth it? I haven't seen it in a while, but that's what stood out to me is like, it seems like a real pain to go into show business. So
I mean, it's not wrong. They're not wrong.
So probably don't.
You mentioned when you mentioned Corduroy and like the whole be comfortable in your skin. That's Sulwe. Speaking of like modern books, that's Lupita Nyong'o's book. Vashti Harrison is the illustrator for it. And that literally is about being comfortable in the skin that you were born in. And that's another new classic. I mean, it helps that it was written by a movie star, but which a lot of movie stars do now. There's a lot of great movie stars writing books. BJ Novak has, the book with no pictures, which is another great, it's like the White Rabbit, Red Rabbit of children's books. Like, okay, parents, read this and you have to do what this book says because there's no pictures in it and you have to keep your kid entertained for this bedtime story. But Sulwe it's also beautifully, beautifully drawn. The art in it almost looks like a Pixar, like one of the Pixar shorts. You know what I mean? It's that very specific style. And speaking of great visual art in books, I know I mentioned it, and Ben, I know you've got a history with this story, is Where the Wild Things Are.
$20.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love it. That's all time.
Where the Wild Things Are is one of the all timers. And the art in that is it's its own thing. I've never seen anything like the art that's in that.
It's specific.
Mm-hmm.
Real
specific.
Sendakian.
Yeah. Did you guys ever see his Nutcracker? We've talked about this on the show too, Hal, I think, in our Christmas episodes. Maurice Sendak has a version of the Nutcracker ballet that was filmed based out of the Seattle Ballet, where he did all of the sets and all of the costumes for it. Wow. And it is gorgeous. But we're talking about Where the Wild Things Are. What's the story of Where the Wild Things Are, though?
Oh, a kid has a temper tantrum, goes to a land of monsters.
And then his temper tantrum's over. Yeah.
Yeah. You're not asking like what happens in Where the Wild Things Are.
No. I'm not asking what happens. I'm asking like, I think a big part of this, what makes the best children's book is going to be teaching something hard to a kid, right? That's why these are elements that we have to look at in this. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, there is like every kid who's lost their temper, every kid who threatened to run away. Like you go and you do that, and at a certain point, you learn to process your anger and your feelings a little bit differently. Like maybe not perfectly, but there is that idea of like, well, I maybe need to learn to deal with this a little better. Like I don't need to go to a land of monsters. Like that isn't where I belong necessarily, but it is a great idea of like this child throwing a temper tantrum and then being the worst monster of all the monsters and becoming their king. But like,
but also like it's also like a trip. Like it's also like a crazy trip because like he does all the things with those monsters, but he comes home and his meal's still warm, you know?
Yes, exactly.
Like,
it goes through
no time at all passed.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're getting that. Like this is what it's like to process these feelings. This is what's good. What goes on in your head. Like I remember being a kid and being upset, and I don't even remember what it was. So I'm sure something dumb. I wanted to run away, and I was putting stuff in a pillowcase. And my parents' way of dealing it was like with it was like, well, you're going to need to pack these things, and you're going to have to go here if you're doing it. So it wasn't like you're staying here. And I got to like the curb, and that was where I realized like, oh, this is not. I need to be at home. I need
to activate this ATM card.
Yeah, I haven't even done this. I don't have a phone. I don't have a quarter to put in a payphone. If I'm going to go back in there, all my stuff is there. I didn't take my Star Wars toys. They're in the basement. So I might as well stay. But like,
was it so humiliating to go back?
It was really tough. We didn't talk for like 3
Did you not
years.
expect for them? You didn't expect they would take you back in, but they did.
Yeah, I was like, oh, maybe this is too much.
It's not like another family touched you and they had to like kick you out of the nest.
No, got close, but I ran out. I ran away. I knew it would be bad.
This is why we've done almost 400 episodes together. I love that you and I have a very similar, I'm going to run away and get as far as the corner story.
Oh, really?
Mine was, I made myself a bindle, like a proper actual bindle with a stick and a bandana. And the only things I put in it were a cheese sandwich and a deck of cards. And I ran away.
Who are you, Curly Sue?
Yeah. I always liked to have a deck of cards around when I was a kid.
A deck of cards?
Yeah.
I bet with
I
a
didn't
deck
have a
of
cell
cards,
phone.
I bet with a deck of cards, young Mark Cagliari gets all the way to the coast.
Oh, for
Just
sure.
playing nickel poker with everyone he can find.
Oh, you're talking to the wrong one of us. Hal's the one that could poker it. I would figure out how to do 3-card Monty.
That's right. He's playing 3-card Monty in Mobile. The child wonder, they call him.
5 years old. My version of the Who's Tommy isn't Pinball Wizard. It's Find the Red Queen Wizard. That was me as a kid.
Now, the Who's Tommy is another one that's the moral is don't be special. It's not worth it.
Yeah. I also, thinking about Where the Wild Things Are and things not going your way and having a tantrum and the lesson learned in that, one that I mentioned briefly that I think the lesson of it is hilarious is Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day, of which the lesson is, hey kids, some days just suck. So get them tomorrow, pal. Like that as an idea for a book is really funny. And some of these, I guess, don't have to have a moral. Some of them are just fun. And that's one of those, I think.
Is Winnie the Pooh, what is the story there? Like, just explore your imagination. Like, you just want to hang out. And there's stories that were created for a child who already loved their stuffed animals. Like, who among us didn't?
Be More Tao, right? You read that. The Tao of Pooh.
The Tao of Pooh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Of course you did. You were a college freshman. Of course you read it.
Of course. I did it. I was there.
Yeah, it's just be more zen about it, would you?
Mm-hmm.
That's the lesson of Pooh.
I want to ask you guys another question then.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to talk about Shel Silverstein.
Yeah.
Specifically because, I mean, obviously you've got The Giving Tree is one of the all-timers. Teaches a great lesson. It's short. It's for very young kids. Or it's for all ages, but it can be, all ages going backwards to the very young. But what do you think about anthologies for purposes of this episode determining the best children's book? Because The Light in the Attic and Where the Sidewalk Ends, super witty, fun books of poetry.
Mm-hmm.
But do you think our best children's book is going to be one aside our second best children's book? The best children's book obviously is a collection of scary stories. But, so that you don't die from vampires. But the second best children's book, is it going to be one single story? Or how do you think were you guys Shel Silverstein fans as kids?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love
way
both.
more.
I mean,
way
I love
more Where the Sidewalk Ends
than Light in the Attic.
And if we're talking about that, we should also mention Rhett Miller's book of No More Poems, which is like a modern Shel Silverstein.
I don't know Rhett Miller's.
Oh,
No More
nice.
Poems.
I didn't even know he did that.
Oh, he did this great. It came out a couple years back. It's drawn by Dan Santat, who's a Caldecott motherfucker. And it is, it's a great book of poems and really like Shel Silversteinian. And he has a new one out called The Baby Changing Station that is also awesome. If you're looking for books for kids, if you're coming here to look for books for kids, Rhett Miller's, also drawn by Dan Santat, illustrated by Dan Santat. Mm-hmm. It's, a brother goes to change his little brother's diaper in a restaurant and they have a baby changing station. He's like, you know what would be better than a little brother? A fucking guitar. And on from there. It's just really good.
Pretty fun. Hal, were you a Silverstein kid?
Huge. I actually like, with your ABZs. That's another great Shel Silverstein book, as is Lafcadio the Lion. Just the lion that learns to fire a rifle. He learns how to shoot back at the hunters. Yeah.
I mean,
but then he gets discovered by a grandmaster of the circus, I believe, that he becomes a circus act. Because you do all the trick shots, like you pull the trigger with his tail or look behind him, pull it with his toes. It's just a really fun, silly, but he's just an odd, silly, like, dude. But those two, Where the Sidewalk Ends and A Light in the Attic, are probably two books that I read. I would just cycle them back and forth for a really long time. They're still good. They're still clever. His illustrations are so bizarre and weird and fluid, but also like really grungy.
Yeah.
They're great. They're just great books. There's something like really raw but also very polished about them. And
they're that original Sesame Street vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Which is also the thing we were talking about with your book, Ben, which is Shel Silverstein is on the level with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Shel Silverstein is writing. He's like, guys, okay, yeah, you can read, books that are going to teach you an important lesson or books that are bedtime stories.
I'm not here
That's
to condescend to you.
Yeah,
I'm here to
exactly.
talk to you. We're equals. We're coming at this as equals.
We're coming at this on the same level. And, hey, this one's kind of subversive and funny. Read this. Isn't that one good? Oh, you like that? Okay, check this one out. This one's really funny. Mm-hmm. Like that is one great thing about Shel Silverstein. But he can also do The Giving Tree, which is the poignant version or a poignant work of his.
Did you see the internet amended The Giving Tree a couple of years back?
No.
Where they gave dignity to the tree. Like I wish I had more facility with this thing, but there were pages that you could put in your copy of The Giving Tree that told a story that was more righteous and more like
less people pleasery.
The tree itself was not sacrificing itself for this greedy. Right? It was like, let me teach you how to. That's the point of it.
Yeah, it's essential to it.
Yeah, but like, I don't know that it cuts deep enough to a child, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
No,
but this version of the thing is like, well, what if it wasn't the twist? What if it was like, hey, learn how to like pick an apple off the tree and keep that tree around,
Yeah, but I think it's also a story. What's brilliant about it is the story you revisit. You see it through a different lens as you age.
Right, the cat's in the cradle.
It's not sad as a kid. Like it is a little bit. It definitely is like, oh, that's a shame about that tree, but also,
man, that tree's so nice. You
don't think about it that much, and then as you get older, it gets sadder. Mm-hmm. So the lesson kind of sticks and changes, and again, it has the potential to shape, at least in some small way, how you approach the world and how you approach people who are there for you or who give things to you or objects.
Yeah, the lesson is you got to scrape them off, Claire.
That's right.
All right. So do we think that there's a Shel Silverstein book among these that's going to come through to join Grover in the finals and the Velveteen Rabbit?
I think you kind of have to put the Giving Tree up there.
I think it's Sidewalk Ends.
No, you don't think so?
You think it's where the sidewalk ends?
I think it's where the sidewalk ends. I think there's more for more people and where the sidewalk ends.
I have to agree. I think it's either Sidewalk Ends or Light in the Attic.
Light in the Attic. I was trying to think of which collection of poems I liked more. It might be Where the Sidewalk Ends. That's the one with Sarah Cynthia Sylvia Stout, isn't it? Who wouldn't take the garbage out.
Sounds right.
And the garbage piles up in the home. Yeah.
It stopped rhyming like right in the middle there.
There's this, and then the garbage is like everywhere. And then her mother was like, "You should clean this up." And Sarah Cynthia Sylvia Stout said, "No, I'm not going to take the garbage to the sidewalk."
You got Silverstein. Exclamation point.
All right. I want to also, this is becoming a little episodic, I realize. But I have another little game I want to play because I think there are three real classics that are, I think they're not even one book. They're multiple stories. They teach multiple lessons. They are beloved by millions. So I think that if we are going to pull one of these out, this is all games of whittling. We're whittling down.
Sure.
So I think we can pull one of these. And I'm wondering if the way that we pull the one that is the ultimate victor out of these is by the collection of characters that they create. All other things being equal, they're going to teach lessons. They're beautifully written. They're illustrated well, but they each have such vastly different collections of characters. And that is The Wizard of Oz, Alice in Wonderland, and Winnie the Pooh.
Personally, I would take the characters in Winnie the Pooh over any of those other characters.
Yeah.
And I would say that the kind of book that you're talking about that is Alice in Wonderland and Wizard of Oz is a different class than Winnie the Pooh a little bit, in that like there's a single adventure happening in those two.
Right.
I would put one of my picks up in that category, which is Summerland by Michael Chabon.
Oh, I don't know Summerland. Was this your closer?
This was my third pick on the way to the thing, but it's a story about, it feels kind of an answer book to Harry Potter to me, where it's like, but none of the words are made up. It's grounded, and it's a story of some kids in the Pacific Northwest who get embroiled in this, between worlds conflict that hinges, and the creatures in the thing are like giants and Bigfoots and fairies and that kind of like of the land kind of creatures.
Mm-hmm.
And it all comes down to a game of baseball. Like there's like this Americana to it. And the trickster god is the central villain of the thing. And it does that thing that I was talking about earlier of like, hey, if you're a kid reading this, get ready to have twice the vocabulary at the end. It's just, it fires on all cylinders in terms of just like adventure story and active characters and wit. Like it's just really beautifully written in the way that he writes for adults. He's also writing for kids.
That's very cool.
Summerland, recommend it. Yeah, it's great.
I will check out Summerland. I don't know.
And it feels like a contemporary Alice in Wonderland or
or Wizard of Oz.
Wizard of Oz, yeah.
I would also put Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe in that category as well.
Sure.
It's like kids go on an adventure somewhere.
Actually, yeah.
The Hobbit is similar to that.
I was going to say
I would building book.
I would swap out Winnie the Pooh with Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe because there is that one human kid enters this crazy world. Winnie the Pooh doesn't have that. It's the 100-acre wood, and that's their world. It's not
Christopher Robin.
I guess that's true. Yeah,
is the one kid that enters. Your Narnia is a bunch of kids, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it's 4 of them.
Yeah, good point.
But let's not get bogged down in how many kids. That's not what it's about.
Right.
It's about an adventure.
But it feels like Winnie the Pooh is not about Christopher Robin walking around going, "Wow, Winnie and Piglet are weird."
And I need to get to the end of the 100-acre woods in order to get back to the
right.
A Wrinkle in Time probably fits into that as well. It's like let's go through space time to rescue our dad who's been gone for 4 years.
Is there? I'm going to put
Peter Pan a little bit.
I'm putting Winnie the Pooh through. Yeah. Is there a version of that kid goes to a magical land and comes out the other side? Is there a best example of that? And even Where the Wild Things Are is that.
That's right.
Do we have a best example of that? I'm putting Winnie the Pooh through. So our Mount Rushmore is going to be extra large.
I mean, technically, you could also put Harry Potter, the first Harry Potter book, which is a children's book, into that category of the kid you think is regular. Like it's the dream of everybody dreamed of like, maybe I have superpowers. Maybe I know magic. So taking that and then thrusting you through their eyes into this world is.
And when I was a kid, I don't think there were the delineations of middle grade and adult books. So I feel like this book could be for kids, could not be for kids, but Ender's Game, which is, if you read it in proximity to Harry Potter, startling.
Yeah,
it's about a kid in a problematic, like abusive little family unit that he's stuck in, being watched by the powers that be, going, I hope this kid will deliver us from the big evil that sometimes comes for us. Oh, he proves out to be that kind of kid. So let's grab him and take him out of his bad family life and take him to a special school where he can learn to use his powers. He'll meet a boy and a girl who defend him against the bullies and become friends as they learn this flying game that we do. As we divide the school into different houses and pin all our hopes and dreams on this chosen one. And then it takes a turn and is about other things. But the setup is like, it's real close.
Yeah.
And arguably for kids, kid protagonist.
Yep.
But like, you guys have read it. Like, stuff happens in there.
Yeah.
But the movie was PG, right?
Yeah. Phantom Tollbooth is also kid goes into a weird world.
Vehicle for puns, though, right? That's all it is.
Yeah, but I have to say, as much as I enjoy the book, the film with Butch Patrick, that is burned into my skull. I watched that so many times.
Really?
As a kid. Yes, I loved it.
I never saw
all the
the
Chuck
movie.
Jones animation in it because he winds up in he goes to the Phantom Tollbooth. Everything about it is like this weird, very much frozen in time, but trying to show like could be any time. But no, this is clearly like 71, I think it was 71, 72, 70. Yeah, somewhere in there. Is Secret Garden in that? Kind of, although they keep coming back. They don't wind up just in the Secret Garden. They can go back and forth.
They don't, they can go back and forth and go into the Secret Garden whenever they want to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I didn't have the Secret Garden on here, but it's another classic.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a version of this that is rising to the top, though?
I mean, I don't see one that I would put.
They're hard to against of these ones? Yeah.
Yeah, like from what we already have.
Of what we already
take
have.
One of these and
Wizard of Oz, Alice in Wonderland, Narnia, any of these. Do any of these? I mean, I would argue that.
Is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory in that idea as well, and James and the Giant Peach? Those like a
I haven't
kid
put any
winds up
Roald
in
Dahl on here yet. Yeah.
In a crazy, well, probably with good reason. There's a lot of problematic stuff.
Well, Orson Scott Card and J.K. Rowling have already been.
Yeah. There's already a lot of
conversation.
This is littered with
problematic authors.
people. Dr. Seuss even has had his, it's again, like you have to judge the art in the time it was made, but also recognize and talk about the things
but
that
also
are not right.
We're now, so you don't have to.
Yeah. I don't see any here that
guys, read Summerland and then
read Summerland and come back to
and
it.
then
Yeah.
the rest.
There is one more or there's a couple more I think that I guess we should talk about.
Okay. Goodnight Moon.
Goodnight Moon is classic. Goodnight Moon's
boring.
job is to put you to sleep.
It is pretty boring. I know. I love that, but it's the perfect
The whole
bedtime
job
book.
of that. It's the perfect bedtime book, yes, but we're looking for the perfect children's book whose primary function shouldn't be put you to sleep.
It's also a great line for when you knock someone out. Goodnight Moon, and then you punch him in the face.
Did you guys ever? I don't think you saw. I did a Goodnight Moon sketch in the radio show Wits.
I don't know if I ever saw it. Did you do it live at Largo? Or this was just on the radio?
No, this would have been in Minnesota.
This was on the radio, yeah. It was Jim Gaffigan and John Moe. And John Moe's this dad who's reading Goodnight Moon to his kid, and his kid's falling asleep. And he says like the kid's asleep, but he's finishing the book. So he says Goodnight Moon, and the moon's like, what? Did you say something? And he can't believe that he's in this conversation with the moon. And the moon is just trying to figure out if this guy's trying to buy drugs off him. Because that's the kind of conversation the moon usually has, is yeah, I'll sell you some weed. Do you like to party?
Do you like to party?
You started a conversation with me, the moon.
Yeah.
You're probably partying.
Yeah,
already.
You're obviously a late night person.
Mm-hmm. Let's have some fun while your kid's asleep.
All right, there is one more. That was not the one I was thinking of.
No, keep it in. Keep it in forever.
There is one book that I think bears mentioning. I breezed past it when I read off that list, but that is
But No Elephants by Jerry Smith.
Not what I was thinking of.
Just me. Okay, fine. Go ahead.
And we've already mentioned this author once when talking about Winnie the Pooh. But we're not talking about Winnie the Pooh right now. We're talking about Charlotte's Web.
That's
No,
White.
I'm wrong. That's E.B. White, not A.A. Milne. It was the two-letter thing.
Who also wrote Stuart Little, which
White who wrote Stuart
via
Little.
TikTok I found out is not a mouse, but just a human who looks like a mouse that's small.
That's right.
They never say specifically.
They never say he's a mouse.
A mouse.
All right, let me rewind that again. There is one more book that I want to talk about, and that is Charlotte's Web. Let's talk a little about Charlotte's Web. I think that's got to be somewhere on this list. I mean, it teaches kids about so many different things. Webs,
pigs,
laws. It is
garbage.
One of the Algonquin Roundtable wrote this book, for Pete's sake.
Charles Nelson Riley is great in this book.
Yeah, so good. It's
Yeah.
Paul Lind. Paul Lind is Templeton.
That's what I meant. Take that out.
Take that.
Templeton. Look, it's Charlotte's Web.
And you know who wrote the song Zuckerman's Famous Pig? Now we're just talking about the movie version, though.
Was it Dr. John?
No, it was Zuckerman's name. No, it was the Sherman Brothers.
Oh, of course.
That's a Sherman Brothers song.
Mm.
Anyway, little tidbits.
E.B. White also, Strunk White, wrote Elements of Style.
Yes. I didn't really. That was E.B. White.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
no
co-authored it. Yeah.
Yeah. What else did Strunk do?
Right. Do we want to put Charlotte's Web on the final list? Or are we thinking about the movie and loving the movie more than we love the book?
I never read the book. I've seen the movie.
Yeah, I've done both.
But that's true of Alice in Wonderland too.
Yeah. I mean, I would put Winnie the Pooh up there before I would put Charlotte's Web up there. Did Winnie the Pooh go through or no? Where's Winnie the Pooh? Was Winnie the Pooh in the bracket? What's going on here?
I have just been kind of, as we've been talking, the ones that have really stood out, I've started to place them onto a list. Okay. And I have now 6 books that I think will be 6 of our finalists.
And But No Elephants by Jerry Smith.
Is that a book?
Yes, that's a book. Neither of you have read But No Elephants?
No, I've not read But
No every night. This was the bedtime book. It's an old lady who lives in a mountain area. And one by one, these animals come, they want to come inside. They're suffering outside. So she brings them in and they each add something to the household. And there's an elephant. And every time she goes, no elephants. All right. The dog can come in, but no elephants. The alligator can come in, but no elephants. And then it gets to winter and the snow is falling. The elephant is covered in snow and suffering. And she says, all right, fine. We'll bring the elephant in. The elephant comes in, fills the entire house so everyone's uncomfortable, then puts his feet through the floor and walks the house to the beach. So they get to move to the beach together because she lets the elephant in.
Oh,
because she included the elephant, her life was made better. It's very sweet. And when my best friend's first daughter was born, one of my best friends, I got that book for him because that is the book, like that is a must-have book to read to your child. And I was old enough. All my other best friends had kids when I was young enough to not be polite enough to send a gift or not to think that far ahead and go like, oh, you wanted this blanket, right? Like that was this is a tradition that was important to me that I want to pass on to another generation. And so it is a great book. It's fantastic. Check it out.
Al Jaffe's Snappy Answers to Stupid Questions.
So good. I have like 3. I think I have one.
Right. Like as a kid, that was
well, sure. Garfield Lets Loose is the best children's book, but, we're picking an important one.
The Celery Stalks at Midnight.
Oh
I actually had Holiday Inn on my list because I think it's the best one because it's Bunnicula and the Holiday Inn. Yeah, it's of the trilogy. There were trilogy of Bunnicula books, right? That's the first one. It's good, but the Holiday Inn is better because they have like there's a lot of subplots, like the two people who are bad at their jobs that are working at the kennel. It's just madcap. They lose Louise, the black poodle.
I'm gonna rein this in, boys.
Fine, go ahead.
Yeah.
There were actually 7. We have 7 finalists on here. Tell me if there are any that I have missed, and then if the answer is no, we will round robin eliminate them.
Black Beauty.
Hal, you be thinking about that and to figure out the order while I read these off.
Black Beauty is from the horse's point of view. Go ahead.
Is it?
Yes.
Yeah. The whole
abused
book,
horse.
Never read it.
The whole book is just, I'm a horse, I'm a horse, I'm a horse, I'm a horse, I'm a horse,
oh,
I'm a
look,
horse,
hey.
I'm a horse, I'm a horse, I'm a horse, I'm a horse, I'm a horse. Right foot, left foot, other right foot, other left foot.
Other right. Oh, jeez. All right. Here is what I have on the list. I have the monster at the end of this book, the snowy day, the Velveteen Rabbit, Where the Sidewalk Ends, Winnie the Pooh, Corduroy, and Where the Wild Things Are. Am I missing anything that really rose to the surface in that conversation?
A Bear Called Paddington. We didn't even discuss.
We didn't.
But
look, there's
the stop motion. Hold on. Wait, I'm going to eliminate it. Calm down.
Let me finish.
I have the floor.
Hold on a second.
I have the shelf.
Reclaiming my time.
I'm reclaiming my time.
Reclaiming my time.
Distinguished gentlemen from Philadelphia. Yes.
As a caveat to that, there are 1,000 great children's books we have not discussed, including Paddington.
That's the last one. I was going to say,
okay,
I have a better memory of the stop motion animation shorts from 1977, which are great, that showed on Nickelodeon for a while. And of course the 2 films, the sequel of which is a perfect movie. But anyway, I just wanted to mention it. It felt weird not to have it mentioned. Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing. Go ahead.
You guys know Mac Barnett used to run 826LA. He's become a children's book author, and his books are great. There's a whole bunch of books that, because we haven't been children in so long, we don't know about.
It's been a while.
A bunch of childless men don't know the contemporary children's book stuff. So, all caveats about the past 40 years.
Yeah, exactly.
And including also past 40 years of your Paddingtons and your things we didn't remember or get to.
Yeah.
Because they don't get Google where I live.
So I heard they're installing it.
Are there any though that you would like to add to this list that you think are egregious overlooks?
Now these are some classics.
All right. My list. Oh, Ken Plume has our producer's privilege, the Lemony Snicket books. Just mention them, that they exist.
Yeah, they do exist. They're very good. And Neil Patrick Harris is great in them.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Adventures of Alfred E. Detweiler, whatever that one is. The one where he's in like the haunted house. It's got like Edward Gorey like art on it. I don't even remember the name of it. Go ahead.
The Berenstain Bears.
Files of Berenstain Bears. Richard Scarry's book. What do people do all day?
House with the clock in its walls. The Bel Airs.
We have to stop eventually. So what? Right.
Super Fudge.
Hal, who's going first and in what order?
Well, I have just one question for you. Are you there, Mark? It's me, Margaret.
What about Little Women? Little Women
That's a book that I think people can be introduced to as a child. Could you put the list somewhere where I can see
Tremaine?
Yeah.
And in the meantime, let's see.
What? In the meantime, what?
What's the book about? Al Jaffe says, it's about moronic questions like that one and clever answers like these. It's about 7 inches tall, 4 inches wide, and 192 pages thick.
It's about these nuts.
It's about these nuts.
So once again, our finalists are The Monster at the End of This Book, The Snowy Day, The Velveteen Rabbit, Where the Sidewalk Ends, The Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, Corduroy, and Where the Wild Things Are. We'll start with Hal, then I'll go, and then Ben, we'll loop around that way.
All right. I'm going to eliminate The Velveteen Rabbit because it's hella depressing.
Wow.
It's too depressing. It worked in its time and it's beloved for a reason. It still survives, but I think we've advanced in storytelling techniques beyond. This toy is going to be destroyed.
Yeah.
Or maybe not, but I'm eliminating it. So chew on that.
All right.
Mark.
I am going to, it's funny. I'm going to eliminate Corduroy because my thought that I had was I can eliminate Corduroy because the Velveteen Rabbit is better.
Mm-hmm. Apparently not. It's one worse.
It is one worse.
Well,
exactly.
No, you're tied. We're tied.
We're tied. That's true.
This is the same round.
Yeah, it is the same round.
I'm going to eliminate Snowy Day.
Whoa.
Because I've never read it and I never will. That's my promise to you.
Fair enough.
On principle, it's now at this point, yeah.
If it's such a classic, how come I haven't read it?
Mm-hmm.
We now have The Monster at the End of This Book, Where the Sidewalk Ends, The Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, and Where the Wild Things Are.
I'm going to eliminate Winnie the Pooh because I think Winnie the Pooh has survived in other media much stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever that movie was that came out a couple years ago with Ewan McGregor, where
Christopher Robin.
I was in tears for probably a good third of that movie, just spread around. And so kudos to the characters existing. Kudos to their Disneyfication, which I still enjoy to this day.
Sure.
But the book has taken a backseat to everything else. And I think that's kind of a ground.
It's a shame because the book is a different vibe than everything else.
It is.
And it's a way more interesting vibe.
Yeah. It's a very sort of pencil drawing, simple words, gentler kind of vibe. We didn't really even talk about Winnie the Pooh all that much, but yeah.
Well, no point now. It's gone. Oh, bother.
I just like to say at this point, the 3 remaining books
are all awesome.
They're all awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am going to eliminate because the protagonist is kind of a pain in the neck.
Nope. I veto your
Where the
choice.
Wild Things are.
No, you got vetoed.
No,
I veto. You don't veto. You can't veto.
I can.
Can't veto.
I'm the guest.
You can't.
That's the best one.
Veto. You know what? This is what the guest, you know what the guest gets? The guest gets last choice.
I know. I was going to eliminate the monster at the end of this book, sadly, in favor of Where the Wild Things Are.
Yeah, I don't think Where the Wild Things Are is the best children's book.
It is because it's the most on the level of a child of all these.
Wait, hold on.
The last 2 that are remaining are very on the level of a child.
Ben, do you know what really happened here?
What happened?
I'm going to pull back the curtain on this. Don't side-eye me, Mark. I'm revealing a magician's trick.
I'm not. I was sipping my Diet Coke.
Mark knew what 3 were left, and he knew that if he didn't eliminate Where the Wild Things Are, that it would beat the monster at the end of this book. Mark, am I correct?
No, not at all.
And Mark's a big structure guy who wants the thing to start with the monster at the end of this book and end with it.
That's not what I said.
The monster at the end of this book is the monster at the end of this podcast.
It might be where the sidewalk ends. No. I know who the monster at the end of this podcast is, and it's the one who's changing the rules at the very end. Sorry, Where the Wild Things Are is out. It's gonna be the monster at the end of this book or Where the Sidewalk Ends. But Ben Acker, as our guest, I leave it to you.
Oh, then I decide that it is Where the Wild Things Are. It's back in.
Nah, I can't put it back in.
Oh, well, interesting. You're wrong on your own podcast. No, it's not tough. You eliminated the thing. No, the monster at the end of this book is clearly more stick to the ribs of your brain than Where the Sidewalk Ends.
Then I think we have our answer.
Where the
that smile. I can't believe you won't cop to the fact. Just be honest and say that's not what I was doing. It was going, and you made a chess.
I don't think you did.
I'm not going to get bullied by you two right now.
I'm defending you. I don't think you did it with a plan.
I didn't do it with a plan.
It felt like a chess move. I could be wrong.
It was not a chess move.
If it was a chess move, it was throwing the board aside.
He threw the board aside. You did a table flip like Teresa on the Real
I
Housewives.
did a chess move, but we were playing checkers.
Why would you?
All right. People of the world.
Spice up your lives.
Spice up
every boy and every girl.
Spice up your lives.
There's a monster at the end of this podcast, and you don't finish this podcast, whatever you do, because there's a monster there. Oh, you kept going. Doesn't work well in this format, does it? At all? It works
it doesn't.
well as a book, though. I'll tell you that. Yeah. It is the best children's book ever outside of Stories to Keep You Alive Despite Vampires, which is the real greatest.
Oh, if that had been in the running and you eliminated that, I would murder.
But for the purposes of this episode, we are picking the monster at the end of this book with the great Grover, who needs only 9 more blue monsters to make a minion. and who is a lovable child who we're teaching not to be afraid, and maybe we learn not to be afraid as well. It's got humor. It's got everything that you could possibly want from a Sesame Street adapted book. And it's generations of children have grown up trying to nudge Grover lovingly towards the monster at the end of the book, which is, spoiler alert, him. You should still read it. That's how good of a book it is. Asked and answered.
Ben Acker, thanks for coming on the show, buddy.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
And your book is now available.
That's right.
And
you can purchase it. It's no longer pre-order. Now you can have it in your hot little hands.
That's right. If you get it the first week, it will help me out.
Yes, get it now. You are listening to this. It has been out for 24 hours.
You can still probably use the same link, which is bit.ly/despite vampires.
Yes, and we will put that out there. It will be in the description of this episode.
Go to your local bookstore.
Yes, go get the book and enjoy it the way we have. And whether you're a Thrilling Adventure, if you're a Thrilling Adventure fan, you have to have it.
Yeah,
you're not a Thrilling Adventure.
You absolutely have to have this book.
If you're not a Thrilling fan, you
get
still
it for your
have to
kid.
have it.
Get it for your nephew, your niece, your local library.
Hey, were those ors or ands?
Yeah.
Go get the book and also follow Ben at Ben Acker.
B-N-A-C-K. B-N-A-C-K-E-R.
Yeah.
Dude.
Thank you for joining us. Thanks for coming back.
Always a pleasure. The fit of giggles that I got in the Quentin Tarantino episode is one of the best times you can hear on a podcast.
It's delirious in a hotel room.
Good times.
So fun. This topic is closed, but there are many more topics to discuss. So please reach out to us on Twitter at WeGotThisTweets or
email us at WeGotThisPodcast@gmail.com or go to Facebook.com/group/WeGotThisPodcast. Discuss your favorite children's books. Discuss the books you're reading to your children, or the ones that were read to you, or the one you read as a kid, or the kids' book you're reading now. Or talk about the greatest children's book that we had to take out of the running, and share your favorite story from Stories to Keep You Alive Despite Vampires. How about that?
And if every one of the people of the world reads this, we may have to do a best story to keep you alive despite vampires as a full episode.
That'd be cool. Right.
Everybody read the book. Ben, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Yes. And also thank you to producer. Oh, what? Huh?
I thought we were saying yes.
Oh, yes. Yes. Thank you also to producer Ken Plume. You can check out all the amazing things he's doing at patreon.com/Ken Plume. Researcher Kate McManus, graphic designer Uri Kelman, and QA engineer Jen Alba.
And thanks, of course, to our musicians, Jonathan Dinerstein and Mike Furman, for our score and theme song, respectively. And thanks to you, the people of the world, for giving us an opportunity to sit down with our dear friend, talk about not only his book, but some of the great books from our childhoods. And I hope that this got all of you thinking about the books that changed you as a kid.
Have you thanked them? Maybe reach out and thank those books.
Thank you, books.
You know what?
Oh, it's never too late to call a book.
To all of you.
If a book made a difference in your life, let it know.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Call a book today.
For Hal Lublin, I'm Mark Gagliardi.
Save a cowboy. And for Mark Gagliardi, I'm Hal Lublin. And don't worry, everybody.
I'm Ben Acker.
We got this.
Lunacy.
MaximumFun.org.
Comedy and culture.
Artist owned. Audience supported.